we heard from a number of people today who said their teen just does not acknowledge that any problems reflect a fault or an area of need within themselves. And so if they won't even acknowledge that they have room to improve, how can we get them to sit down for these collaborative conversations?
That's a great question. People basically deny that they have situations or behaviors when they actually know full well that they have them. And so their denial is really an ineffective coping mechanism. And so what I think would be most helpful in these situations is to stick with the facts, ma'am. Here's what I'm observing. Here's what your behavior is showing me. Here's what we're fighting about. And this is causing a real conflict in the family. So I want to deal with some of these things that I'm observing. And then you can ask them, what are you observing? So we show that they're interested, because you can, if what you're observing is only focused on what they're doing wrong, then they're not going to be interested. So if what you're doing is saying, I notice that when you do this, I respond in this way, and that's not working. So there are two issues here. One is this behavior, and one is my response. So I'd like to talk about those together. And then that helps them feel like, oh, it's not all on them. This is where many kids with ADHD and neurodivergence are super defensive. They're just like, oh, it's always me, and I don't think it's always me. So I'm just going to stick with my belief and dig in that I'm not the problem here. You're the problem.
That is incredible, because that reflects my daily life. Exactly, Sharon. Thank you. I'm going to replay that one and listen to it a few times to let it soak in. But in the meantime, the next biggest challenge in this group was so emotional control around facing consequences. So you talked about coming up with very clear and logical consequences. Now, when our children are facing those consequences and rejection sensitive dysphoria or just emotional dysregulation kicks in and they cannot hold it together, what is our best response in order to not renegotiate in the moment, as you said, and also not lose our stuff?
So when your child is dysregulated, really what's called for is a time apart. And they may not want to do that because they want to berate you because they're angry. And you can then separate yourself. So because you don't have to, stand around and listen to your child, wail on you. That's not okay in any way. When kids are dysregulated, they need help figuring out how to manage, how to soothe themselves. So not in that moment, but in a calmer moment, you're going to have a conversation. When you get upset, when you start to lose it, what helps you slow down? What helps you settle down? I do not use the word calm because nobody wants to be told calm down. But when we have, and then you write those things down and you put them on the fridge or they put them on their phone or whatever. And then you ask, what happens if you refuse to do that? What do you want me to do if you refuse to do the things that you're telling me help you? That's the question that we need to ask, because when kids are refusing, they're telling us something that they're like beyond the beyond. They can't pull themselves back. So we want to know what they think would be helpful. And if they don't know, then we can come up with some mutual ideas. That's a time for brainstorming. When kids have rejection sensitive dysphoria, they still need limits. They still need boundaries. And if they are not, if they're feeling, persecuted in that moment because you're, enforcing the structure that everybody's agreed to, that isn't really your issue. That is their issue, and you can talk about it with them a few hours later when they've calmed down. But it's important that you set up what the parameters are in advance and a non-cooperation clause, because then you have things that you can fall back on.
Oh, okay. I'm going to squeeze in one more question because it really was so common, and it dovetails with the third big challenge, which you had mentioned the natural consequence that your family devised for your child's lying.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple people just wondered, could we spend a minute brainstorming some natural consequences for, I'm going to name like 3 big challenges that I'm seeing today.
Right.
Okay, so one is breaking house rules. So that could be like staying up later than you're supposed to, sneaking, downstairs, like
Right.
using devices, right? Not doing your chores, your responsibilities around the house, and disrespectful behavior.
Okay.
Can we just brainstorm a few natural consequences?
I'm happy to do it. So let me just say there's a difference between natural and logical consequences. A natural consequence is if I go outside right now and it's 28 degrees, which it is, I'm going to be cold for more than like 30 seconds because I'm not wearing a coat, right? That's a natural consequence. A logical consequence is what we're talking about here. So logical consequences are things like, if you lie to us anytime and we know that you're lying and you admit that, or you admit that you lie or whatever, then the following weekend you will not be you will have not earned the privilege of hanging out with your friends outside the house, because these are earned privileges. Then that's what the agreement is. And so logical consequences are things like, oh, if you decide to drive my car with your JOL, even though you're not supposed to when I go to visit your grandmother for the day, and you hit a stop sign, let's see, you're going to help me pay for it. You're going to sit with me while I get the car you're going to go with me for the car estimates. The logical consequences really relate to something that the child has done or something that you've agreed to in advance. So for example, when a child is, smoking marijuana if you come home and your garage smells like marijuana, and your son and his buddy, your 14-year-old son, they've left a tornado-size wake of munchies in the kitchen, then what's the logical consequence going to be? Well, I guess you haven't earned the privilege of having a sleepover. That either A, is unsupervised, or B, even is supervised. So we want to link things, and there are different kinds of logical consequences, but they're always, sort of related to things that matter to kids. So you earn the privilege of extra screen time. You earn the privilege of going out with your friends. You earn the privilege of having the keys to the car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's really important as parents of teens to think about, what does my child think he's entitled to? And what are actually privileges that he or she earns, or they earn, through trust and honesty and doing their chores and things like that. And if you have questions, feel free to contact me through my website or at info@drsharonsaline.com. Check out my groups, join me. Let's dig deeper. These are not easy situations, and I'm here to help you.